Hello, happy Monday, everyone. Nice to see you. A couple opening comments. First, I just want to, I think it's a sad opening for today. You know, the weekend saw two tragedies. One, the loss of the members of the softball team and the coach for Umpqua Community College. I did reach out to the president of the college on Saturday. I don't know how many, you probably saw this in the coverage. They were rebuilding their softball team. It was the first season they were back. And we all know that that community suffered a lot in the shooting several years ago. And we're here to be supportive. It's very tough on the community there. And so we should all keep them in our thoughts. Also with the passing of Senator Woods, who has been ill, just a lovely man. I know there was a statement come out today. Always hard to lose folks. I don't know anything about anything of the replacement situation there, so nothing to share there, but I'm glad he was with his family in Colorado. I think that was, you know, when you're at your last few days, it's nice to be close to your family, so, and that's just a really sad situation for the Senate. Switching gears a little bit, I want to give a little bit of an update on the tariff situation. As you know, I had a roundtable last week with small and mid-sized businesses, and we've been continuing to hear from businesses. You know, the Business Oregon set up a survey to hear from businesses, and I have a brief update on that. So far, 225 businesses that either import or export goods have responded to the business survey. It is still open, but that was as of this morning. The top 4 respondent industries are manufacturing, retail, agriculture, and construction. So far, the main impacts reported are increased cost to customers, increased cost of products that the business purchases, and supply chain disruptions. Business Oregon is working to aggregate the information, so we'll be getting you more on that as we go. But the survey is still out there. Please continue to promote that. Getting more information about the different sectors is very helpful for us to put together a plan. I do want to share one quote from the survey. Quote, "Once our markets are lost, they will not be regained. Many small farmers will go out of business from these tariffs." And I don't know if you saw my social media post from last week, but I happened to have a meeting with the new Delegate General of the government of Quebec. Long story short, they're opening a new office in Seattle. They're combining the Pacific Northwest region. They're opening a new office. And he was down here visiting to establish a relationship with my office. And we had a really good conversation about the long-standing ties between Canada, the province of Quebec, Oregon, employers, Oregon manufacturers, and a real understanding that we have to continue to support each other. So I look forward to working not only with the other Canadian consul generals in the area, but also the province of Quebec. We need to maintain those relationships, even if the tariff situation or the federal governments might not be having the best relationships, but a state to province relationship I think is going to be important if we're going to weather this tariff situation as best we can. On the federal funding side, as always, we continue to work with our state agencies and watching and monitoring resources that are not coming into the state. I do have a little bit of good news. On Friday, the Oregon Department of Emergency Management received $168 million of the approximately $170 million in funding that FEMA had frozen. So you probably, I think I did talk about the FEMA grants last week. So to get the $168 million on the move for the outstanding needs is really great. It's been 2 months since that money's been frozen, and now it's flowing again. And I think that's just a good example of what happens when you keep fighting for what is right, and we'll keep doing that on all the funding streams that are frozen. And then we also had members of my office in Washington, D.C. last week. It was the American, there was Association of Human Service Agencies meeting, and we had staff there. So they were on Capitol Hill talking about federal funding for things like Medicaid, food stamps, temporary assistance for needy families. So there's a lot of work happening across states for folks who do the work on the ground, trying to communicate to Congress the detrimental effects of potentially cutting these programs. So with that, your time, question time. So.
Go for it,
Do I need the
Yeah, you
questions?
do. Yeah. Good talking stick. Exactly. Your turn.
Hi, Governor.
Hello.
So on tariffs, I heard a little bit of your news conference last week, heard what you're saying now. I mean, what went through my mind is I'm thinking about what your Republican colleagues might say, which is that you're very concerned potentially about new costs for Oregonians from these tariffs, but they would probably point to a $2 billion transportation package that is absolutely going to cost people more money, and why is the concern not there for that? And I just wondered, how do you square those things? And again, with the farmers, we are hearing from the farmers this session about a bill that they think is going to be way too onerous in terms of regulations and this new board, and they think that's going to be really disastrous for them. So it's just been interesting to see Democrats decrying some of the effects of the federal stuff, where Republicans here decrying some of the effects of the state stuff, and no one seems to want to have a coherent picture of all of it. I just wonder how you think of that. I know that's a kind of
interesting thought. Okay, so first of all, I think I'm in complete agreement with legislative leaders that we have to focus on protecting Oregonians from increased costs. I think the difference between some of the legislative work, those are works in progress, right? The transportation package is not an unusual approach to something that we do every 6 years to try to make sure we can maintain our system. So that's not a brand new thing. However, there's a process, right? People are actually talking about it, discussing, trying to figure out what the best transportation package is, saying whatever issues are being raised, whether it's from the ag sector or other things. What's problematic about the Trump administration, he unilaterally did a 10% tariff. Overnight in executive orders, he's throwing more tariffs out. As a trade-dependent state, it is very hard to react to the scale and the speed at which this is happening, and that's what we heard at the roundtable. When you're a business, and one moment you understand what your costs are, the next day your costs are quadrupling or 10 times even higher. That is almost unsustainable for a small business. That could bankrupt people overnight. There's been no process, there's been no thoughtfulness to the Trump administration, and it's having real impact today. And the pause is helpful, but we need to see indications from the Trump administration that these things are going to be rescinded, because this is having huge impact not only in Oregon but across the country. The flow of goods in and out of our country helps keep consumer prices stable. I think we can all support the idea to have more onshore manufacturing. You can't turn that on overnight. And the Trump administration doesn't seem to have any sense of timing. They are just trying to push countries. And what right now, consumers and businesses in the United States are going to get hurt by this.
Okay.
A reminder for those virtual, your questions will be asked in the order in which they are received. And the first person that sent in a question is Christina from K2. Are you looking into the financial implications of student visa revocations? With this likely to deter international students from coming here, how will it impact university tuition? So you have a higher education team looking into this, and is there anything you plan to do as governor to address it?
Well, let's start thank you for the question. Let's start at the highest level. Everything that the Trump administration is doing around visas, whether you're here on a student visa or you're trying to travel to the country to participate in tourism, everything is being impacted right now. I'm hearing it from the travel and tourism industry, that this has had a freezing effect. People are canceling or not making plans. Obviously, if you're a student at a university who has come here to study, and as I said last week, I think international students at our university campuses is good for everyone. It's good for intellectual exchange, it's good for the students. It's something we've had in this country for, decades, if not hundreds of years. I am glad that the court has suspended the actions against a couple students here in Oregon who were losing their visas. So my understanding is that happened today or yesterday. That's been suspended, so I'm glad to see that. And to the underlying question of impact on campus, we have not looked into that. My first priority is to say campuses should include folks who want to be here to study, and suspending the visas for unknown reasons is not, I don't think it's who we are as Americans. I think we want people to travel to our country, participate in our educational institutions. So I'm not looking at the impact. I want these students to stay and actually be able to participate.
Governor.
Congrats on being out here.
Oh, thank you. So at a town hall that Salem Reporter hosted last week, Councilor Irvin Brown from here in Salem was talking about how you have not You have not cut a check for Salem, you're not going to cut a check for Salem, you're not going to swoop down and save the city. Whether, of course, do you want to swoop down and save Salem from some of its budget woes? And I guess more seriously, what is the state's responsibility in helping this city, which like many is struggling financially because of property tax laws from many years ago, but is struggling more than others because of having state government here? What responsibility do you see the state having to help Salem?
Appreciate that question. Well, as a voter in Salem, I will be supporting the local measure that the city council put before voters. It's to help them pay for their essential services, so I hope people do support that. I think they've made a strong case that that will help keep the senior center open, the libraries open. It's a really important measure. I have been publicly supportive of the state helping the city of Salem out because we do have obviously a lot of state buildings that don't pay local property tax. We do need to have a conversation. That's not unlike other capital cities in other states. What I haven't seen this session, and someone will have to update me, I don't believe there's a piece of legislation trying to make that happen. If there is, I am not up to speed on that. It might have been Representative Anderson.
Representative Anderson has a bill, but it hasn't been scheduled.
Okay, let me take a look at the bill and get back to you. But I haven't had a conversation this year with Representative Anderson about it, so let me look at that.
Virtual question from Damian Alvarado at Newswatch 12 down Southern Oregon about FEMA. So FEMA's abrupt termination of BRIC program. Southern Oregon communities like Grants Pass and Medford have lost significant federal funding, $50 million and $34.8 million respectively for critical water infrastructure projects. Given funding setbacks, what steps is your administration taking to support these communities in securing alternative funding and ensuring the resilience of essential services?
Well, and I've mentioned in the past, thank you for the question. I'm pretty upset about the rescinding of the BRIC grants. They're the right types of things the federal government should be helping states on, which is helping our communities be more resilient in the face of disasters. It's a good idea. We had good proposals. Communities need these dollars. So first of all, I'm going to continue to fight to have those dollars flowing back to the state. I don't know if I'll be successful, but first, that is Oregon tax money that should come back. Those grants were awarded, the money should come back. In terms of what we can do in lieu of that, I'll be honest, I need to be sitting down with legislators who do have the purse strings and decide how they want to handle this, because these are projects that are ready to go now. My assumption is legislators in these particular districts are probably talking among themselves now to figure that out. That will also mean other things won't get funded, but these are important projects, and these are significant grants that are being pulled, frankly, with no understanding of the impact, I think. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. Governor, you and particularly your education department have stood pretty firm behind DEI efforts despite the Trump administration's kind of attack on those. I'm wondering if you could tell us what you think about the appointed Port of Portland commissioners deciding today to walk back their DEI platform and delete it from the website.
Thank you for the question. I think what we're seeing about the attempts by the Trump administration to push and in some cases bully people into stepping back from what we've been doing in the state here around diversity, equity, and inclusion is unique, and it's kind of context specific. And so what I would say about the Port of Portland situation is, my understanding is they didn't have a lot of choice because of how their fiscal relationship with the federal government, and they made a choice that as a contractor it would be very difficult for them to continue to provide service if they were significantly impacted. I believe we have to stand our ground as much as we can here. We have strong non-discrimination laws on the books. I think diversity, equity, and inclusion done in this state has been done lawfully, and I'm going to continue to stand by that. I didn't have any conversations with the Port of Portland, but I do know it's cities, any type of special government, cities, nonprofits, everybody's having this internal conversation about whether they need to and what the impact will be. And here's the bottom line. I believe the leadership at the Port of Portland and the commission and the staff there continue to be committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether they have to remove a policy or not.
Go ahead.
Virtual question from Noticias Northwest. The BIPOC caucus, the state legislative BIPOC caucus, fears SB 611 is food for all. could die in committee due to federal budget cuts. Should legislators be focusing on bills like the Diamond Project instead of addressing food insecurity among minority groups?
Well, as you know, I think supporting food security in our communities is really, really important. I think I have a lot of concerns right now about what the federal government is saying about the SNAP program. Trying to pull that back and reduce benefits, I think that would really harm Oregonians right now. They've already cut $500 million of federal commodities out of our emergency food system. So that has already happened. So we see these attacks from the federal government coming. As it relates to Food for All, I understand the intent there. I think given I think the legislators are going to have to decide priorities where they need to put dollars. And right now, I'm focused on the housing side of the equation. If people can afford their housing, that will also help them afford their food. So that's where my priority is at the moment.
Go ahead, Anastasia.
Hi, Governor. I was hoping you can maybe elaborate and give a bit of an update on the 30-day plan that you requested from the Oregon State Hospital. I'm kind of curious specifically how you're hoping for that to differ from the CMS immediate changes that were already put into place.
Thank you for the question. I don't have an update on the 30-day plan. I think where it differs from CMS is I don't want to wait for the full report from CMS about this incident because I think it's going to be a few more days at least. So I wanted to make sure we were instituting things that we know based on the information we have can ensure better training and safety for the patients who are there. So that I think is what you're going to see. We also have long-term problems that are outside of the incident that happened. And so that 30-day plan is not just going to be incident specific, but also talk about where we're going to be in 30 days, 60 days, hopefully 90 days to stabilize services at the state hospital.
Got another virtual question. This one from NBC5 in Medford from Cade Sterling. We are a little over halfway through this legislative session. How do you feel about what's been done in the legislature so far? Are you concerned that any particular areas of focus may have to be cut from this session?
It strikes me that the legislature is about where they should be. I know there's an arc to the session, right? They're in deadline mode now. They need to make sure bills are moving to the other chamber. I think on the big items, I feel good about where the housing and homelessness conversation is. A lot of it is now in the budget committee. Same with the mental health and addiction proposals that are out there to strengthen the system. And my school accountability bill is I believe, in good shape in Ways and Means. We have several bills there to support our public education system. I would urge our leaders to move those as soon as possible because I think they're really important for our districts to know right now what's happening. I think the transportation framework is a good starting point. I think that is going to take a lot of work by all the legislators to get that done by the end of session. But in general, I think the priorities are the right ones. I think things that are interesting topics have fallen by the wayside, and now we're focused on the top priorities of the state. And as I said last week, I also want them to come home with a package for funding wildfire response. So if we can get all that done, I think it'll be a good session.
Christine?
Hi, Governor. What do you want to see from the new leadership of the Public Defense Commission, and what would you like to see them do differently to drop the number of unrepresented individuals, and why do you think this is the right move right now?
Well, there wasn't a lot of confidence in the current leadership of the agency, and so we needed a change in leadership. So the interim director has been told a couple things. We need a plan by June 1st, how we're really going to reduce the number of individuals who don't have public defense. And I need a practical plan, not a pie-in-the-sky plan. We need to focus on the 6 counties that have the highest level of unrepresented defendants at the moment. We need to fix that. So I'm expecting to see county-specific plans for each of those 6 counties so we can make progress. My message to the interim director has been, yes, we have long-standing issues. We need a system conversation, but we also have to have immediate progress here in the next 3 to 6 months so we can get folks the defense they need, which is good for the system and good for the victims who have been waiting as well.
Any virtuals?
Yes, another virtual question, this time from Amelia Templeton from OPB. Can you explain why you favor closing the Oregon National Primate Research Center?
Yes. So the Primate Center, so a couple things. I believe in OHSU as a research institution. I also think this is a interesting moment in the development of that institution. They're contemplating a merger. Like other research institutions around the country, they're worried about NIH funding. I think we should be laser focused at OHSU on maintaining the research mission, but doing it in a way that's sustainable. I believe the Primate Research Center is a center that needs to be closed. There needs to be a downsizing plan, similar to what Harvard did more than a decade ago, to run the course of the research there and close down the center. I think it's a financial liability. I think it's a moral liability for the institution. And I think there are different ways we can approach research without doing experiments on primates.
Any virtuals that I think we've got that haven't gone? All right, Dirk.
I have one.
Oh, good.
Regarding the Willamette and PGE and the tribal nations there
Oh, yeah.
with the falls. What's your opinion on that? Or is there a stance that the government holds to as far as one way or the other?
Yeah. Well, I have been committed for many years now to make sure there is increased public access to the falls. I think it's a national and natural treasure that there should be more access to. Because I was involved years ago trying to make sure we could have some public access to the falls. Since that time, there's been activity on both sides of the river from different tribes. I hope the tribes can come together and reach some mutual consensus on both sides of the river to meet the needs of the different tribal nations. At the end of the day, I hope we can respect our sovereign nations as well as get public access to the falls, because I think that would be great for the area, and I think Oregonians deserve to be able to see it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dirk. He's always on the other side.
Thank you. All right, I have a couple choices here. I gotta pick. Just to tie into some of the state hospital and public defense stuff. I mean, we've had a very tumultuous, I would say, several weeks. It was OIA director out, state hospital superintendent out, public defense commission head out, or I don't know her exact title. It doesn't feel like a necessarily good time in Oregon government. It feels like there's a lot of dysfunction people are hearing about. Obviously some ongoing issues with voter registration as well. What do you say to voters who look at all these headlines and think, this is messed up? I mean, we have big problems in this state. I don't know, it's hard not to read all this and come away with the sense that maybe things aren't going so well in state government.
Appreciate the question. So here's how I approach my work. There are the top priorities for the state, and you're very aware what those are: housing and homelessness, mental health and addiction in our public schools. As we were just talking about this session, I'm super focused on that. And there has been another piece of why I wanted to be governor in the first place, is making sure state government can function and function well. Now, the individual cases of the OIA, the state hospital, and public defense, each individually had challenges. I think the message to Oregonians is, I'm in charge, I'm paying attention. When there's a problem, we're going to fix it, and we're going to get better outcomes from these different agencies. Some of the things you can't anticipate, public defense is a crisis, the state hospital has been a crisis, the situation at OIA was a surprise. Doesn't matter. My job is to make sure there are good people in charge who have clear plans to make things better. And so I would just tell the Oregonians, when there's a problem, we're going to fix it, and I'm going to keep working on fixing it.
Any rituals?
Yeah, so just in follow-up round 2.
Yeah, go for it.
So this one comes again from Damien. Oregon's coastal salmon fisheries have experienced significant declines, with the 2024 Chinook catch being only 40% of the 10-year average. This downturn has been attributed to climate change effects like warming waters and drought. How is the state planning to support Southern Oregon's fishing communities in the face of declining salmon populations, and what measures are being considered to mitigate the impact of climate change on these industries?
Well, our immediate action has been to seek emergency support from the federal government. Now, this is 2 salmon seasons in a row that I've requested for that support. We can get you the details on that. So, and we're seeing these results because of changes in the ocean temperatures and other things related to climate change. We have to be serious about supporting the salmon, particularly as they go into the interior. And that's why I've been a strong supporter of making sure we have strong hatchery policies, making sure we have forest plans that protect the temperature around the streams in terms of what we're doing. I think the changes in the private forest accord were really important in that regard. So it's not one thing that's going to protect our fish, but we have to be serious about each one of those things that we know from a science perspective will help them, because we are fighting the ocean being in a very different spot right now, and that is affecting our coastal fisheries for sure.
Okay, one last one for you, Julia.
Thank you. So I want to go back to a question we didn't get fully answered a couple of weeks ago about the budget. Speaker Finke reiterated to a number of us last week, like, her belief that the co-chairs framework and their idea that they have just $987.5 million to spend on anything that's not continuing the program, which obviously you think there's more. Why do you think there's more? What is the disconnect between their framework and what you think the state has available to spend?
Well, I think the co-chair framework is definitely a moment in time in session. I've been doing budgets even before I was elected, so I've seen this play out. They are going to be inherently cautious until the May forecast, and of course with the federal situation also more cautious. We'll have to see what the forecast looks like. But when I put my budget together based on the resources we have, and there hasn't been a significant amount of shifting from what we think the expense side of the ledger is, I think we can fund the things that I've put in my budget. State agencies that can continue to do their work, plus targeted significant investments in the main areas: education, mental health and addiction, and housing and homelessness. I think what we're seeing across the street is a lot of interest in a lot of different things. This is going to come down to how we prioritize the dollars. I think if we keep our priorities focused with the resources we have, we can fund most of my budget, if not all of it. It'll depend on the May forecast, but this is no time to step back from these investments. I do worry that we will hold too much money back. I think state government has to continue to invest in our communities. They need us more than ever, especially as the federal government is stepping back. Let's not be too cautious. Our communities need us to invest in the top priorities of the state. And that's what was in my budget. I think it stays true today. And I'll continue that message directly with the legislators about what we need to do to finish the session.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.